a long time ago, and I talked to him. We still he lives up in Oregon, and this happened when he was in the Marine Corps quite a few years ago. I got out of the military at 84. He's a little older than me, so this happened, you know, the early 80s, and this happened to him, and I was going to tell you the story, then call Kurt, and then let you talk directly to him. That way, because this happened to him. But I wanted you to hear this. I listened to your program. He don't even know about your program.
Okay. All right.
If or you can hear it secondhand, that's fine. But I would think that you would, for the show, you would rather get it firsthand.
Yeah, I'm sure he could add some details.
It's up to you.
Well, I mean, we'll do it both ways. I might like add a little excerpt to say, you know, this will be coming up soon or something like that on the next video, which I need to get to making because I've had some health issues there for a minute, you know. And, doing a little bit better now, feeling a little better about it. So, yeah, let's, Kurt, huh?
Kurt, that's his name. And but you want me to tell you a story?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. He was with his cousin and two friends of his in a I can't remember what kind of car. It was a big car, though. You know, back then, an old Impala or something. I don't know, but it was a big car. And they were up off the 210. There's a place called Sunland. It's just past Pasadena, and it goes into the Angeles National Forest up there. And they got, I don't know, you ever heard of Jack Parsons? He's one of the first guys that started NASA and all that. He was a Crowley Satanist. You know,
yeah. The dude with the triangle on his head, you know, the famous picture.
Yes. Jack Parsons lived out there, and there's a lot of witchcraft going on out there. Right. But see, Kurt didn't know any of this. He just told me what he's seen. And they were driving up through there, up by Sunland, and into, like he said, they were going towards Angeles National Forest. And he got to the top of a hill, and his car just shut off. And, you know, he's like, what is going on? That's just weird, you know. And I can't remember if he said 3 or 4 of these dogmen ran out. He explained them like a werewolf. You know, he don't even know what Dogman is. So so they ran out to his car. One jumped on the hood. One's on the right side. One's on the left side. And I can't remember if he said 3 or 4, if one went to the back. And he said the one that got on the hood, he's looking right at it from inside the car. His car shut off. All of them, not a peep. They didn't know what to do. They just looked at these. So I told him, well, describe it. Describe what you actually seen. How big were they? And he said he thought they were like 5 or 6 foot tall. And he said they had a head of a dog and kind of the body of a man, but the bottom of the thing was more like a dog. And hands, like me or you have hands. They weren't paws, it was a hand. And teeth and all that. And he said, I said, well, how close were you? And he goes, I don't know. It was just right through the windshield, maybe a foot or two. And then the one on my side was right there at the window. And he said they were so scared that they just sat there and looked. Not a word, didn't move. And a little while, they all just run off. And he said, he said it was the weirdest thing. And then he fired his car up and went to the top of the hill, over the hill. And I said, well, I mean, you talk to your cousin anymore? You know, we're talking many years ago. He goes, yeah. And these two friends, I can't remember who they were. I think one of them might have been in the. He was out. He's originally from Wisconsin. I'm originally from Indiana. I was born in Evansville, just north of there on the farm. So Lexington, I went in the Army with a buddy of mine from Versailles, which is right next to where you're from.
Right. Wow. Cool.
So we're Midwest people, and anyways, he was out here in the Marine Corps in El Toro he worked on aircraft. He was a Marine Air Wing.
And this was where this happened?
Okay. Do you know Southern California at all?
No, not really. I've never been to California.
Okay, it's just past Pasadena. Like I was telling you, Pasadena has a history. Jack Parsons lived out there, and there's a lot of witchcraft going on in that area.
Right.
And it's just past, if you look at a map on the 210 freeway, it's called the 210. You go up this hill over there by Pasadena, it's called Latuna Canyon. Down the hill, and there's Sunland Boulevard, Osborne, and all that. That area right there, I drive by all the time. I'm a FedEx driver, and I drive by all the time, and it's kind of spooky in there. It just gives you a weird feeling driving through there. And if you take a right on Sunland and you can go back up into them hills, there's a lot of wealthy people in Pasadena area. A lot of old. And they have, like I said, and I told Kurt kind of the background. I said, usually, as far as I knew, with these dogman type creatures or shapeshifters or what do you want to call them, usually it had to do with witchcraft, you know.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you're in the right area for it, you know. And he didn't know that. And I said, a lot of times my understanding is the people having these events, whether it's some kind of mass or sacrifice or whatever they do, they use these things for protection. They use them so you can't get around what they're doing, because these things, obviously, they can hear, see everything better than you and very strong. And I said, you ran into something, in my opinion, you ran into something going on you shouldn't be getting around.
Right.
And these things let you know, you're not welcome. They had their windows up and everything, and he didn't have any firearms or nothing. He wasn't hunting or nothing. I met him up in Washington State, Spokane, and I was working out of the Spokane terminal for FedEx, and he was living up there. That's how I met him. And we used to, I'd go with him scouting deer. This guy knows the woods good too. I mean, he knows. He lived in Northern California at one time in a tent. One of them tents that you see, the old like Civil War cotton type tents. I don't know what you call them. In the military, we got GP mediums. It was not as big as a GP medium, but he worked for the forestry. He had a bunch of mules, and he was out there, and he worked out there for the forestry. So for 2 or 3 years, I can't remember. So this guy knows the woods. He's lived out in the woods. He's just never seen anything like this before,
Right.
This ain't like somebody from the city just knows, you misidentify a bear, and this was no misidentification.
Yeah.
This was up close, personal, scared the hell out of him.
Right. Did he say that they were acting kind of vicious toward him or anything, or?
Oh yeah, they were absolutely vicious. He just felt like, this is the end. I guess they felt that, they were all going to die, because obviously a car window or a car door ain't going to stop something like this.
Yeah,
but
right.
they just got all around that car, literally. There's more than one of them. Got all the way around that car, and just was raising all kinds of hell. And I'm trying to get the most detail about this as I can, as far as what they look like. And he just described them down to, this last year I had a friend of mine come out from Indiana, and his wife, sitting in the back seat, with my wife, and we're driving along, and she asked me, and now I grew up with these people since I was children, so they're very comfortable about asking me stuff that they're not comfortable with asking other people. And she said, "Hey, Ed, did you know of anything like a werewolf or something?" And out of the blue, and I'm like, "What? And she goes, "A friend of mine come up to me, and she didn't know what to say or do, and she told me about this deal with this best she could describe. It's like a werewolf in a movie." And so we got talking about that, and I said, "Well, yeah, I do know something about that." And she goes, "Is that real?" And I said, "Well, I think they are. A lot of people do. It's weird that out of the blue she would tell me something. Her friend told her about this. They live back, like I said, in Indiana, southern Indiana. It's about 20 miles from the Ohio River. We just jump on the 64, run right into Louisville, where you're at. We're right there, kind of close to you. And that was odd. This summer she told me about something like that, and I'm like, "What the hell? That's two people."
Why? So she saw one too?
Her friend did, and came to her, and she was afraid to tell anybody. But you tell people about something like this, they think you're nuts.
Oh yeah. And even when you tell them about a Bigfoot encounter, they think you're nuts. And look, Bigfoot scared me, but I could not imagine seeing a dog man. That seems scarier.
That's me too. Yeah, for some reason that sounds worse.
There's all kinds of strange creatures out there. I had a lady here the other day, and I might alter her voice or tell her story, but her and her son encountered a creature that was a little bit different. It was almost kind of like a Bigfoot, but it was hairless, and I think she said it had like 3 toes and stuff like that, but there was some kind of hairless creature that was kind of thin and almost sounded kind of like, what's that one thing that kind of walks on all fours? It was popular there for a little while.
A chupacabra? Or?
No, not a chupacabra. Slender Man kind of thing.
Oh, I don't know. I heard of Mothman before, but I don't know about that.
And take the encounters that I've had, like with Bigfoot, that horned creature, and then that Darrow thing. I mean, there's all kinds of things out there that are kind of hidden from us, in the crypto world, and every once in a while they creep over onto our side, I guess, But
right,
man, that's a whole different ball game, man. That's pretty scary.
Well, when I was a kid, I worked at a nursery, trees. And a friend of mine, Tony, he married my cousin, and it was his dad was telling us this. And this was back in Indiana, probably in the 50s or something. But he was telling me this back in the 70s. And I was a kid. I was 15, 16 years old. And I asked him, what the big hunters, you go in their house, I could take you in their house, and there's every known animal stuffed in that house. A bunch of bears, one standing up, one sitting down, just a bobcat over here, mountain lion over. I mean, you name it, it's in there. And so they're huge hunters. My uncle would go with them to Newfoundland and all over the place just to hunt, moose or whatever it may be. And I asked him, what's the weirdest thing you've seen out in the woods? He goes, well, I seen this thing. I was walking along, and this was southern Indiana. And I was walking along in the woods, and the closest thing I can describe it to you is a monkey. And I said, well, we ain't got no monkeys in Indiana. This is the 70s, he's telling me this. And I said, really? And so I said, well, describe it then. And he said, well, it was small. It wasn't big at all. It was maybe 5 foot, maybe. But it was crouched down. It had his back towards me like he was working on something, like he was doing something with his hands on the ground there, and he was squatted down. And I walked up to it, and I looked right at it. It wasn't like it was anything I ever seen. And the closest thing he said was it looked like a monkey to me. And it was all squatted down doing something. And I said, well, why didn't you shoot it? And he goes, I didn't know what to do. I wasn't hunting whatever that was. So I was just absolutely stunned. And he sat there and watched it for a while and just walked away. And I told him, describe it the best you can. He goes, I had arms, legs, just like it was like a person about 5 foot tall, squatted down, only it had hair all over his body. And it looked the closest I could ever give you in the animal world is a dang chimpanzee. I said, really? That really threw me. And this man, I absolutely, what he tells me is absolutely true, just like Kurt. Whatever he tells me, I believe. And Carla, who lives back here in Indiana, was telling me about this dog man. I told her, Carla, I know it's weird, but if you don't believe me, I know I have a good friend named Kurt. Next time he's out here visiting me, I'll call you. So I did. He was out this last year, and I called Carla and let him talk to her because of the dog man deal, and he told her the story just like I told you. And he, hey, not every, there are other people that see these things. And so I told Carla, don't be shy. Ask him anything you want. Ask him anything about, the size of it, what it looked like, all of that. And I was listening, and she had all kinds of questions. And so I just thought that you'd want to hear that. And now that you heard the story from me, like I said, I can get a hold of Kurt.
Yeah.
And talk to Kurt. And is this your cell, or what's his phone number here?
This is a Skype number. But I can email you the cell number, because I wouldn't know.
Okay.
If you tried to call me, I wouldn't probably hear this,
Okay. You got my email number, right? Because I emailed you.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Ed Paul 996. Yeah. Just email me your number, and I'll call Kurt. I'm pretty sure he's a very nice guy, and he wouldn't mind telling his story to you. But like I wanted you to hear it and see if you're even interested. And then I'll talk to him, and I would think that you would want these stories firsthand.
Oh yeah, well, either way, yeah, it'd be better firsthand because you could ask more questions if he was standing there, and seeing it. But yeah, certainly any kind of story like this, man. Yeah, you call me.
Right. Well. I listen to your show all the time. I listen to you and Wes, and there's a couple other ones out there. But you're from my neck of the woods, and I listen to you a lot. I drive a truck all night, so I just sit there and listen to your shows. A lot of interesting ones. I have one thing. When I was in Colorado, I lived in Colorado for about 5 years with my ex-wife. I got out of the Army in '84. I was Fort Polk, Louisiana.
Right.
And I went up to Fort Carson, Colorado. My ex-wife was in the military, and so I know Colorado well. I lived there for 5 years in the town called Fountain, just south of Colorado Springs. And we used to go out to Gunnison. I don't know if you ever heard of Gunnison, but if you go down to Pueblo and you go west, Gunnison is out there. And big hunting popular place, and we used to go to Gunnison and go north from there into the woods, into the mountains. And me and a buddy of mine, Don Tyson, we were in his Nissan, and we went north from there, and it got nighttime, and so we were gonna camp. And this time I didn't have my dogs. I almost always had my dogs when we went out, and this time we didn't. And we took our rifles. I had a high priority. I had a 30-30, and he had a bolt gun. I can't remember what it was. And we both had 22 long rifles, semi-automatic. I had a Marlin Model 60. I can't remember what he had, but it was a 22. So we built a fire, and we're out there. and we're sitting by the fire, him across from the fire from me. We're just bullshitting and, getting ready to go to bed. And we heard what sounded like, to me, it was bipedal. It was crunch, 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 real loud. And it was close. It was like 30 yards away. And there's no lights. There's no houses, nothing near us. But I had a mag light, and he had a mag light. And it was the old, like a 3-battery type before the LEDs. It was just a bulb in there. And this thing would crunch, 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 crunch. And it was close. And me and Don, what the hell? So we yelled out, hey, if you're going to come in, come in. Because normally etiquette is when you're out in the woods, you walk up on somebody's campsite, you yell out, and you just don't walk around out there. You get shot, So you call out and you walk up to the deal. You don't try to surprise anybody. And whatever this was not trying to surprise us. It was heavy. So, like I said, crunch, crunch, and what the hell? So we took our flashlights, we shined, couldn't see a thing. And we could see trees, we could see stuff out there. These flashlights are pretty good, that you could adjust the beam and get out there a ways. Nothing. So we sat back down like, what the hell? Crunch, 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 again. And this weren't no elk, this weren't no mule deer, that we were thinking of the things that were in the woods there. And, you might have black bear, you might have bobcat, lynx, mountain lion, whatever. Nothing. They don't make noise like that, period. And even an elk is heavy that can make something that when it put its hoof down, you could hear it. But typically an elk, when it's walking, it'll make a sound, but it'll surprise itself. If it steps on a twig or something, it'll even, because it doesn't want to make a lot of sound. And an elk's heavy, but this thing was 2-legged. This weren't 4-legged. And we're like, okay, that ain't no elk. I ain't never heard anything like that before. And so we called out again, and the damn thing just stopped. And we finally got pissed, and we said, we're going to shoot if you don't identify yourself. Nothing. So I took my 30-30. I don't know, it's a Marlin model 336. It probably holds, 4 or 5, one in the pipe. And I just unloaded in that area. And he unloaded his high-powered rifle in that area. 30 yards away, we could pinpoint pretty close to whatever it was. I guarantee you, if you were there, you'd be getting behind a tree or underneath something. And so we laid into it with everything we had. Then we picked up the 22s. My 22, I think, hold 15 or 17. I just sprayed it. Sprayed the area. He sprayed it. So now we're like, okay, no sound. After all that, no sound whatsoever. So we sat there next to the fire, and we're going, shit, dude, we got to go to sleep eventually. And we were scared. And we did bring a tent, and we were just going to lay down there next to the fire with sleeping bags. Don was actually in the military at that time. He was a GI there at Fort Carson. And so we were scared. And so we said, well, I'll tell you what, let's lay in the bed of your truck, and nothing can get to us from underneath or all 4 sides. The only thing they can get to from the top. And I said, we slept with our holding on to our rifles. I said, something grabs you, I'll shoot. Something grabs me, you shoot. And so we did. We went to sleep, and we were scared, but we managed to go to sleep. Got up in the morning. Okay, now we could see the area. So we walked out where the noise was, and there was a big tree right there. We looked all over, and we couldn't find nothing. No prints. Of course, the ground was where if you stepped down, you wouldn't make a print. It was like brush and stuff like that, pine needles, stuff like that. So you wouldn't make a print. There was no dirt or mud or nothing like that. But we looked at twigs. When we start shooting, nothing run off either. Nothing run off. And any animal, I don't care what it is, you start shooting, they're hightailing it.
Yeah. And well, it might have ran off, but they can be sneaky somehow or another. They can be real sneaky, but it was making noise on purpose, probably because they can be.
It was
silent.
making noise, heavy. Whatever this was sounded just like a person walking, only it was very heavy. And so I looked up in the trees too, the best I could with the flashlight. Nothing. And back then, I didn't know Bigfoot could climb a tree or nothing like that. But I'm thinking the only thing, now that I know what I know now, this could be is a Bigfoot, because they can disappear like you wouldn't believe. They can climb trees. And I looked in that area, man, and I'm telling you, look for any tufts of hair, any broken branches, anything like that. And between where that thing was, where we figured he was, where there was this one tree, and us was heavy brush. No way you're going to make it through there. You had to crawl in and out of it. There was no just walking through the brush. This stuff was thick, and trees falling, stuff like that. You would have to weed your way through there. So you couldn't come through there without making a whole lot of noise. And but where we figured it was by this tree, it was, you could just walk right up to it. And we're like, holy cow, what is going on, you know? And I've never seen anything like that before, or heard anything like that before at all. And but that's my experience in the woods. That's the only thing I've ever encountered like that at all. And I mean, I've been all over Kentucky, and
well, you was brave. You was brave to sleep in the back of the truck, wasn't something like that?
You know, what I know now. There ain't no way in hell you would catch me sleeping in a truck. And inside the, you know, a Nissan at that time, it was a standard cab pickup. There ain't no room in them Nissans. You'd have to sleep sitting straight up, you know. And that's why we decided to sleep in the back. And like I said, what I know now, I wouldn't have slept. I said, let's get that. We'll drive all the way. I don't give a damn, you know, if we have to drive all the way back to Gunnison. Let's, you know, and it would take, you know, 2-3 hours. I can't remember how far out we were, but you get back up in there, it takes a while to get back, you know, and we were just dead tired, or we would have got out of there. But we were really tired, and I just can't believe how dumb I was. I just couldn't believe it, you know.
It's almost
today,
better
there's
not.
No way out of it.
It's almost better not knowing, you know, if you're going to go camping.
Yeah. You know, the stuff that you just put out of your mind, when there's no way you should put that out of your mind. You know, if I was in the military, like I was still in the military, and we were tactical, we were out there patrolling, or we in a night defensive position, you don't dismiss shit. You know, you hear something out there, it's something. You know, you don't just, oh, yeah, that's whatever. Bullshit. You know, you set up a flare, whatever. If it makes noise, it's making noise. It's alive. It ain't, you can tell if the wind's blowing or anything like that, normal, natural noise. But when something makes noise like that, there's something there. So, you know, so it's amazing to me that as a civilian, just a normal person, just dismisses shit. Oh, well, you know, no big deal. We can't see it, so it ain't there. What? You know, that's just dumb.
Well, it's a good thing you didn't go up into there where he was looking around. Well, you know, I had a few encounters before with, you know, Bigfoot, and it wasn't until I went up in his territory where he had the arches and stuff built, you know.
Right.
And I was looking around in his area. That was when he came to my campsite that night and reached in my tent and grabbed me. He grabbed me through the tent, you know, like pushed the tent in and squeezed my shoulder, and then he reached into my tent. And I saw individual hairs on his arm, but I think when they know that you know and you go up in their territory, they'll come messing with you close, you know.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, I never go in the woods without firepower, and I mean something. I carry my 44 mag. I got a Ruger Super Red Hawk 44 mag, and then I normally carry a rifle or a shotgun with slugs.
something of that nature. I never go in the woods. I never even did back then, and I never really thought about Bigfoot that much, really. I remember they had a show on TV. I can't remember what the hell that thing was called, but over there in, what's the name of that town? Green Mountain Falls. It's like you're going up towards Cripple Creek and Divide from Colorado Springs, up to 24 right there. They had all kinds of Bigfoot sightings when we were there. And what the heck was the name of that show? Back in the early 80s, late 70s. It was 80s.
In Search of?
In Search of. I think it was In Search of. And they had these Bigfoot breaking into people's homes back then. So, as the crow flies, in that area, I had a friend of mine live there, JT. He came out of Vietnam, and his brother, Kurt, still lives out there. Anyways, there was a lot of these Bigfoot sightings. So a bunch of us guys in Colorado, I hung out with a lot of GIs, and Don was one of them. And so we went up to 11 Mile by Cripple Creek. There's a place called 11 Mile Reservoir. And from there, if you walk as the crow flies, you go towards Green Mountain Falls through the woods, through the mountains. So we figured we'll go that way towards Green Mountain. But now you're talking a lot of miles. But, Bigfoot would be Bigfoot. It wouldn't be just hanging around town there. So all the time we would go. And our understanding was in Vegas there was a $1 million bounty on Bigfoot's head, dead or alive. So we thought, well, hell, we ain't got nothing better to do. So we all had rifles. I had my dogs. And we went north, and I don't know how many times we went out there. And like I said, knowing what I know now, doing what we were doing, we'd never see one in a million years walking along. These things are so good at their environment. They're going to see you long before you see them. And we all got rifles. We got dogs. He ain't coming a million miles from, close to us. But we would go looking for it all the time, and we would go to sleep out there. I didn't have a worry in the world. I had my dogs with me. Nothing's getting close to me with them. I had 2 Dobermans, and nothing was getting close to me at night with them things. They can hear the slightest anything, and we used to go up there all the time, going looking for them. And gosh. All the years, like listening to your show and Wes and all these other, I've been researching Bigfoot for, 30, 40 years. I'm 54 now, and as a kid, once Jim told me about that sighting he had, I was always curious about it. And anytime I'd see something on TV, the different shows, the one in Arkansas, Falk, Arkansas down there, can't remember what that thing was called, something.
The Falk Monster.
Boggy Creek.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Boggy Creek Monster.
Yeah, I mean, everything.
I think they called it the Falk Monster.
Falk or something like that. It was down there, Falk, Arkansas, I believe, down there by the swamps.
Yeah, and that was a three-toed one, or at least it was when I first heard about the encounter.
Right, and I spent a lot of time in Louisiana. I was down there in Fort Polk, and I was all over the swamps down there. And I never seen anything like it, just gators. About the most exciting thing we seen down there, But I hear there's a lot down there too, and Sabine River and all that. I've heard of your show and people talking about that area. Right? How much time I spent down there? I couldn't believe it. But I never seen anything down there.
Right. When I lived up in Indiana, I lived in Columbia City. I'd play in the cornfields and in the woods and, a little swamp area and stuff. I never thought about that. And there was one time I was out, me and my brothers, we'd kind of play in the cornfields when the corn got tall, chase each other and stuff. And there was one time I ran into a perfect circle. And I was like thinking, what the heck, how in the world is there a perfect circle? And it was just like laid down in a swirl. And then I, went through the corn a little bit further and landed into another one. And I thought maybe a tornado came through there and just kind of touched down, and made a perfect circle, and
it's like a crop circle.
Yeah. I didn't know anything about crop circles or something, but if I had that to do over again, I would have, searched the whole area and see if it made a pattern. There might have been more than two. That's just all I saw was the two.
Right.
But that's interesting, to think about. There was actually crop circles in the field behind my house.
Yeah, and you thinking, well, that happens in Britain over there. It don't happen here in Indiana. Shoot.
And your dogman encounters happen a lot around cornfields, too, for some reason.
I've heard of different things happening there a lot in Indiana, not in a heavily wooded area, but cornfields. It's like, really? Yeah. Where the hell did they hide when they cut the corn down?
You remember the judge I had on from Ohio? He was a judge in Ohio, and he had to dogman check.
I heard that just the other day, as a matter of fact. Yep.
Yeah.
He was jogging. He was jogging out there.
Right.
Oh, shoot.
And he didn't care to let the people know who he was. He was a judge, and that wasn't that story about wind very freaky?
The wind?
Yeah, a little entity, little kid like ghost, I guess, or something. It was going into his kid's room.
Yes, yeah. Oh, that's right. I remember now. Oh shit!
Said his name was Wind.
Kid. Oh my Lord! Talking to your kid, right?
Yeah. Or he heard a strange voice. He thought it was his kid making a strange voice, like it was, talking in some strange voice like that. He didn't know if it was that thing or his kid, but he thought it was his kid talking in that voice. And it's like, dude, man, you need to get to praying about that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you need a exorcist, or like you say before. I think I heard you say you have the power to do it yourself. Most people just don't know that. The blood of Jesus, and say, just wash your house with it and get them out of there. But most people don't know that. They watch The Exorcist and think you have to have this Catholic priest come out, and not so much.
I kind of wished I had to put that story on in the beginning and said, we got a Dogman story at the end. Because sometimes people will listen to the Dogman part and then they'll just drop off. But that story was interesting. Very interesting.
Right. Oh, man, that was a really good one. I just heard that last week. I was on the truck and listened to that. I just literally heard that last week. And it was I was glued to that one. Oh, there was a story about a dogman getting caught in a trap. And I can't remember if it was you or another one. And they got caught in a trap, not a dogman, a Bigfoot, and two other Bigfoot come up to it like to get it out of the trap. And then they start talking about something else. I'm like, holy cow. Are you going to let us sit there hanging on that one? They were looking out of the house at the Bigfoot. One was caught in a trap. My guess is like a bear trap. Because in southern Indiana, I got friends that we used to trap, and they'd trap a muskrat and stuff like that with number 2 coil springs, and about the size of them things. Well, to catch a Bigfoot, I'm only assuming it would have to be damn big. The trap would have to be a big steel trap, and I don't even know the numbers or anything what you'd call one of those. But it just left you hanging. They went on to another subject, another part of the story, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that they didn't tell us what happened, because they were looking out the window at these things from inside the house, and they didn't say what did they get.
The only one I had where a thing was in the trap was the military guys that were sent out to do patrol for the state police when they were hunting for marijuana.
Oh, and they were in armored vehicles. And I in a 113, I don't know what they called the armored vehicle he was in, but he was in an armored vehicle, and the gunner up front, they start firing on the big one because the female was in the trap. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah. There was two around the female. They didn't want to leave the female, it sounded like. And so they...
Right, and a little one, right? There was a little one, too, like a baby one or something. Yeah, and they start firing that thing up with the saw.
Man, I caught heck over that story, but they were in a position to where that male was getting violent with the people in the state police had to do their job. So they were kind of in a position when that thing started coming at them violently, and they had to. He said it took a lot to put it down too.
Well, it amazed me that when I listened to stuff, I listened to what they hacked. I was in the military. Now I was out before they brought in the SAW, Squad Automatic Weapon. It's a 223, and it's like, okay, in my day we had 60s, and especially on a track, and you ain't got to hump it because. In a company, you have 2 60s and a 50. Well, I was in an engineer battalion. So actually, each squad had their 60, and the rest of the squad humped the ammo. But it's like, okay, why wouldn't you have a 60 on a track? Because you don't have to carry the ammo. You carry as much ammo as possible and have a lot of firepower. It's 7.62. Well, this thing, he said he was on a SAW. That's 223. Why would you be out there on a track vehicle with a 223? But he did, and he fired into this thing with a 223, and it was just hitting him, and he was kept coming, and finally the guy went for his pelvis. Once you break that pelvis, he ain't going, he ain't moving, Right. And most people's going to fire for the torso. They're going to hit the biggest area and lay into it, but of course they're talking about a person. Given you got, let's say, 8 foot of hairy whatever running at you, 4 foot wide, and you're laying into it and you ain't going down, I was thinking, why in the world didn't you have a 7.62? A 60 shoots about 600 rounds a minute. It's designed after the German MG, which fired at about 1,000 to 1,200 rounds a minute. Our 60 was designed after that, but they slowed the cycle rate way down so you have more control over the weapon. So a 60 will just devastate, at that amount of rounds. If you had like a bolt gun with a 308, that's what a 60 shoots, a 308, 7.62 by 51. If you had a bolt gun, well, boom, and you got to do the action or whatever, yeah, I can understand. But when you're shooting something that's fully auto with belt fed, you could really lay into something and just take pieces of him off. But they had a SAW, which was a 223, and it took them a while to get it down. He actually made it quite a ways to get it down. That's what stands out in my when you guys are telling these stories. Well, I was in the military, so I'm sitting there listening to the story, and I'm like, my God, why didn't you do this?
Yeah.
But they had what they had. And I don't even, the guys that were in that track, they didn't know they were ever going to see a Bigfoot. But the higher ups knew they were in these fields with these crops, weed or whatever. And the higher ups knew that these things were in the area. That's why they called these military guys. But the military guys were just thinking, well, we're just, in case we run into some bad.
The higher ups may have thought, though, that the marijuana growers were out there and they might be dangerous to the state police.
Yeah,
that was the other option. Who knows? But it seemed like they knew something, and yeah.
I got a feeling they knew dang well what they were dealing with, and they didn't want to deal with it. That's why they called in the guys with the tracks and the the military, the combat people that will will deal with the situation. Like these special forces guys that gets called out, like the LBL down there by where I live. It's right close to me, in Indiana there. And I don't know if you remember that story, but the family that got killed out there. Well, Fort Campbell's right there, so they send their boys in there.
They sent a special team in, and they actually went in and hunted it down and got it. And they said that that this was kind of like a dog man, but it had like dog type ears, and it also had human ears, and it had double row of teeth.
Oh, no, that's the first time I ever heard of that.
Yeah.
It had dog ears and had human ears under it or beside it?
Under it, yeah. Isn't that freaky?
See there?
Yeah.
Yeah, because what I think they are is something like Nephilim. I think they're like back in the old days, the giants, angel, human, and whatever,
right? Yeah.
Like
That's
an animal. And
with
the
the double row of teeth in it, and I think they even said it had 6 fingers. So that sounds Nephilim to me. I mean,
exactly,
hybrid.
Exactly. I can't believe that people actually believe that this is an animal, like a regular animal. That's ridiculous. If it's a regular animal, it couldn't do what it does. There's no way it could do what it does. Number one, it couldn't take them kind of rounds when you're shooting at it.
Right.
What animal, even a grizzly bear, if you come up and you go to Kodiak Island where they're 1,500 pounds, some of the biggest bears on earth, 1,500-pound bear, you can put down with a 45-70 or something like that, a high-powered rifle. It might take a few rounds, but you can get it down. Now, buddy of mine, the one I was telling you back home, that's got the bears in his house stuffed, I could take you there and show you, because when I was a kid, he was the same grade, same age, we're still friends to this day. Like I said, he's married to my cousin. And I could take you in there and show you how many bullets it took to take this bear down, that bear down. Because when they do the taxidermy, it still has a bullet hole, but they could cover it up real good. But I could sit there and count them. And some of these bears took a few rounds before they went down. And I mean, 2 guys shooting at it with high-powered rifles, hitting it, and it might have took 6, 7, 8 rounds to get this thing to go down, But shooting at one of these, I've heard where they just won't go dead, boom, boom. It takes rounds and it just walks off like it never got hit, And it's like, come on, what animal does that? I don't think there's something on Earth. You're in Africa and you're going after a hippo. I take a 45-70, pop him a few times in the head. He's going to go down. And these things can take rounds, so there has to be some kind of supernatural something about them.
Yeah, there's something strange about it, that's for sure. And, and plus they're so huge. Like you said, a bear can take some rounds, but I remember that guy who owned the junkyard. I called it like the Lost Tapes. There was 2 parts. And he's like, well, I think I could take it, because it was coming in his junkyard regular. And he said,
right.
He said, I can kill it if I want to, because it came around so often he was able to see it. And it reached in his camper that time, and when he was sleeping in his camper, because he had crackheads out there stealing his
held him down?
Yeah, and then it broke his rib.
Is that the one that, oh, God, yes.
Yeah, and I was like, dude, don't try to shoot this thing. You're out there by yourself with one little shotgun. And I said, dude, if you try to shoot this thing, you're going to die. Because there was more than one anyway.
Exactly. And even if you had slugs and you had a semi-automatic, like 1100 Remington or something, and you laid into this thing, it depends on how big it is, too. If it's 8 foot with a 4 foot back, or it's 9 foot with a 5 foot back, or it's 10 foot with a 6 foot back. How big is it, number one?
You imagine how big that is. Most people are sitting in a room with an 8 foot ceiling. You imagine that thing, its head's all the way to your ceiling or above it. And,
right.
And as wide as a piece of drywall is 4 foot. So you imagine it being that wide. I mean, that's huge. Now, I didn't, the time that reached in my tent, I got a glimpse of it from a distance, so I couldn't really get a good appreciation for how big it was. But when it reached in my tent, I seen how big its arm was. And when it reached all the way in and was able to grab my shoulder, and I never saw an elbow,
Oh, sweet. Now, when it grabbed you, did you get to see the rest of its body?
No, I didn't. No, not up close. I saw it from a distance the time before when we were out there. Going from tree to tree, but no, I saw his arm. I was scared to look out, and my tent was unzipped, like how the door on the tent like kind of got a round top on it. I had that top.
Yeah.
I had that top round zipped open, and it flapped over towards the outside to let air in because it was so hot that summer. And now it reached in, and I guess it was kind of standing kind of to the side of the door. And it reached in, and grabbed me. And of course, it was dark too. There was a full moon, so I would have been able to see it. And you know, the inside of the tent was lit up really good because that full moon shining on that light blue tent just made the, you know, tent real bright inside. And
right.
But you know, his arm was huge, man, like my leg, and his hand was like a baseball mitt, man. It was just enormous. And when it pulled its hand back out, I was elbowing his hand. And then I was scared to even look, you know. But then I was scared to stay in my tent because I was thinking about that Osmond guy who had one pick him up in his tent and pack him off.
Yeah, in his sleeping bag and carried him off. And then he lived with that family for a while.
Yeah. I was thinking of that, man, instantly. And I was, like, scared to get out, and I was scared to stay in it. So I was, like, just freaked out, man. And finally, you know, after about 3 or 4 minutes, I couldn't hear him or nothing out there, so... And I didn't hear him walk off either. That was another thing. It was really ground that had a lot of those like shale rock and stuff, so it was loud when I walked on it, but I never heard him. Of course, I was screaming at first too, so he might have ran off while I was screaming. But yeah, that scared the heck out of me, man.
Now, was he picked up in his tent or a sleeping bag?
I think he was picked up in his sleeping bag. I think you're right about that.
That's what I thought. Now, it was around, what, 1924?
Yeah, something like that. It was on back a ways.
Now, you know, I always put myself in their shoes. Like, if something, when I went, I still have some military extreme cold weather Arctic bags. And let's say I was in that. It's a mummy type bag. And, you know, you pick somebody up in that, you're going to the bottom. And it's scary because you're in there. Now, I always wondered, well, you know, this thing's carrying you pretty far up because he's a big old boy. You know, take your knife and cut a hole in that bag and just get out. But he might not have a knife on him in the bag. Oh, man. And how do you breathe that long in them bags? You're hyperventilating because you're scared shitless. And I'm like, oh, man, that would just be the most terrible situation.
Yeah.
You know, oh, my Lord. And you know, he was in it for a while, my understanding. Time that thing got to where it was going. Oh, Lord. You know, that's scary.
I couldn't imagine, man, sitting there with a group of them, you know.
You know, when I hear these stories, one thing I think people do is underestimate weight in a big way. They don't understand weight. They say, well, he's 8 foot, so I'm thinking he's 400 pounds. Bullshit. If that thing is literally 8 foot.
11, 12.
Exactly. My guess is somewhere around 800 to 1,000 pounds being an 8-footer. Now, I'm just guessing. You could be right.
Wide,
like 11 or 12.
1.5, 2 foot thick. You know, you're talking about a monstrosity, man. You know, it's a
right. And I was listening to one, and he was thinking it was about 3 foot thick, but I think he was more like 10 foot or 12 foot too. But now you think about that. You think about 36 inches deep, and if you're 9 or 10 foot, this thing is massive weight. You've heard that story of Kandahar, the giant in Kandahar? The thing was about 12 foot tall.
Yeah.
And
could you imagine seeing something that huge? Dude, that's a freaking giant, man. My ceiling's 8 foot, so I can imagine something standing there, and above that, you know, 4 foot above it. Golly, dude, you'd be looking up. That would be just terrifying, man. You know.
Right.
I'm glad I didn't see it up close. You know, when I saw it, I don't even know if I saw the one that reached in my tent, but it was probably 100 yards from me. You know, so it's hard to gauge how huge something is at that distance, kind of up a hill. You know, but
right.
I couldn't imagine standing there and something be that big, and oh my gosh, man, that's crazy. And then people that aren't scared, you know, when you hear the stories and they want to go out there and leave gifts and they sleep on the ground, you know, hoping they'll come around. Are you freaking kidding me, man?
I know. Once you experience what you have, that's reality. That's like how vulnerable you are. Now, when I would go out in Colorado, I had 5 or 6 guys with me, all loaded down, all had weapons, and I had my dogs. And when you sleep at night, you sleep in a night defensive position, and they're all GIs. They know what they're doing. I have to tell everybody what to do. Okay, you sleep this way. Okay, feet in, heads out, 50-50 on your security. In other words, every other person's awake. You know, civilians you would have to tell everything to, but when I went out with these guys, they lived it. So you don't have to tell them all this stuff. Even in that situation, and I had 2 dogs with me, and we would go out at night, and we would always, we wouldn't be tactical like military, but we'd always leave one guy awake and with the dogs, and the dogs would be laying right there. That way, and we'd always slept right next to our rifles. And given what we know now,
the dogs the dogs will notice it way before we do, because I remember when I was camping down there, the dog wouldn't come out of the tent.
Right. And I had some brave-ass dogs, but like everybody I've heard, my dog is absolutely a great coon dog. It is vicious. It ain't scared of nothing, and it hightails it for the porch, you know, whatever, you know. Yeah. Or it ruins them. It ruins them. They won't hunt again, you know. Tell me that ain't supernatural. That ain't an animal that this thing is dealing with. Dogs ain't like that. You know, and I got healers now.
Yeah, that little healers. That little dog we had, man, down there with us. At night we was in there sleeping, and all of a sudden the dog came over to me and was trying to get under me, you know, putting his nose, trying to nudge, and I was like, "What the heck is wrong with the dog?" And I wasn't thinking nothing about Bigfoot, and then the next morning when we was getting out of the tent, the dog wouldn't come out of the tent. He's like, "What's wrong with the dog?" I'm like, "Dude, I don't know." But now that when I thought back on it, that was when I realized, and that was when I started going up there and looking around, you know, because even when I saw the thing going from tree to tree, I tried to talk myself into thinking it was maybe a fisherman or something, had a hoodie on, because it had that kind of that crest, you know, kind of head. And I thought, well, maybe it was a dude wearing a black hoodie. And, I mean, you try to tell yourself something else, you know.
Yeah, you're always trying to explain it away, but now that you know what you know now, you go straight to Bigfoot. It ain't no trying to talk your way out of it. Now you're looking, boy, when I'm out in the woods now, or I'm doing something now, I'm on alert. I mean, it's like, I got the dogs, I got, a pistol, at least. I always carry my 44 mag, but like that's going to help something 8 foot tall, but makes me feel a lot better. But, I usually got a long gun too with me, and, I'm looking for signs now. I'm always out there. I make it unpleasant for people out there with me too, you know, cause they just want to walk it down the trail and shit like that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm always trying to bring up the rear, because as they always say that, and they don't even know what's going on, but I'm walking with somebody. I'm all looking for shit, and people are thinking, what the hell's his problem? You know, it's like, just keep going. You know, you don't tell people, yeah, well, there could be Bigfoot out here, you know.
Yeah, as many people come up missing, you know, that kind of bothers me too, because you'll hear people do interviews and they're like, well, they typically aren't aggressive and they don't mess with you and blah, blah, blah. And that is kind of true, because they seem to kind of steer clear. But all the people that come up missing, and the search and rescue people, they can find a missing person. The dogs can track a person if it's something you know that's not nefarious. But
absolutely,
there's so many cases where the dogs lose the trail, or they won't go. You know, their tails be tucked under, and so that makes you wonder.
Well, the people that you're hearing that from are the people that come back. Oh yeah, they're friendly, or they're not really a threat. Yeah, because you came back.
Yeah, well, what about all the aggressive reports you aren't getting? Yeah.
Yeah, you ain't getting. They don't come back. You know,
they aren't around to tell the story. Yeah, that's another thing I was thinking too the other day. I was listening to a case, and they were, you know, trying to make it like it's friendly, you know, this or that. And I think since there is a Nephilim aspect to it, I think that there are rules that they know that God has that they're not supposed to, but sometimes they cross those lines. I mean, think about the angels that crossed the line and bred with daughters of men and corrupted all flesh, you know.
Right,
So
Genesis 6.
Yeah, so they don't want to get chained up, but sometimes I think that some of them cross that line, and in my opinion, they probably get judged, you know, for it, and so they tend to not do it, you know.
Yeah, the punishment's pretty dang bad, you know.
Right.
God don't mess around. So, but they did it once. Why wouldn't they do it again? You know.
Yeah, I mean,
back pre-flood, the whole world was full of them. The whole world was full, literally, of Nephilim. So God killed the whole world off.
And not just crossed with humans, but crossed with all different kinds of genetic stuff with all
genetics, with even plants,
right.
animals, everything. Literally everything on Earth was corrupted.
Yeah, and you know, I've heard a few of the stories about the Greys and stuff, and
that's in English what we're reading. Go back to the Greek, go back to the Hebrew, and you look at what that sentence actually says. It's talking about his bloodline. You know, they didn't know DNA back then. Noah didn't know what DNA was, but you know, when this was written, DNA wasn't a thing. So, but they did know what blood was.
He was perfect in all his generations. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're talking about his bloodline.
That Dan Burrish guy, he claimed to had worked at Area 51, and you know, and who knows if he's telling the truth or not. But one thing he was talking about that was interesting is that he said that the physiology of the Grey was plant-based.
Plant-based?
Yeah, it wasn't like it was normal, regular flesh like we have, but plant-based kind of something, or somehow or another it was kind of related plant-like, but also with
weird. I never heard of that before.
Yeah, so that kind of made me think, maybe there is some truth to this. If you know, if the Nephilim corrupted all, you know, kind of did all kinds of genetic manipulation, maybe there's some truth to that. Who knows? I mean, I guess we never know for sure about it, but
right. Well, I believe the Greys, they're not from outer space. That whole deal, that whole thing about outer space, I think, is just baloney. I think they are angelic related or demon related, or like you say, there might be genetic manipulation, but it comes from angelic or demonic or here. There is no other thing.
Right.
You know, supernatural.
It would be angelic, because the only ones that are disembodied that don't have bodies are demons. They were
exactly
at one point, and after they got killed, their spirit came out of the body, and that's what a demon is. So these physical things that are out there that can hunt and eat and all that kind of stuff, those have to be Nephilim. Or angelic, or, you know, it could be an angelic being or Nephilim.
Yes, something of this combination. Right. Whatever combination evil could come up with, you know, that's what we're seeing, and, you know, we're trying to figure out what part is how much is human, or how much is angelic, or how much is whatever. But I just don't believe in anything space related, like it comes from another planet. I don't believe any of that.
I don't either. I don't know if angels can go live on another, like the moon or something like that, but
well, I think they're the stars. I think they're out there, and God puts them in their place, and that's where they stay. You know, I think that obviously an angel isn't three-dimensional where it feels heat or cold, or
the whole
it can.
The whole alien thing, that would the reason I can't go with that is because that would mean evolution happened.
Exactly.
And therefore, God didn't create it. You know, so as a Christian, I can't go there. It's got to be angelic in nature, which technically they're not born on the earth, so they are extraterrestrial in a sense, but they're not aliens, like, you know, evolved somewhere else on another world and then, you know, came here. And well, Jesus didn't go die.
What other world?
You know,
right? We're buying into their lies as far as there is other worlds. I don't know that. I don't know what's outside of God's realm or God's dome or whatever.
I don't think there's
is up there.
I don't think there's
nobody knows.
Yeah, I don't think there's other Earths like this, because when in creation it said God made the heavens and the earth, and the heavens and stuff was like supposed to be for lights, the lesser lights and stuff like that, and the sun was for a main light. And
but have you ever taken a telescope and look out? I have. I borrowed a buddy of mine's this last year, the best telescope I could find, and he has a Meade. I don't know what model it is, but I looked. The only thing you're going to see out there is lights.
Right.
I couldn't see nothing. I looked at the moon. Wow, I really brought that thing up close, and that's neat. But anything else, like if you pointed at a star, you focus that thing the best you can. Now, you'll see a star twinkling and moving, and I think that this is no planet
even Jupiter. I couldn't make out any details on Jupiter or Saturn, any of those. But the moon, you can look at the mountain ranges on the moon with a good telescope.
Wow, that thing was impressive that I seen through the telescope. But all the other planets, all I see is a light in the sky.
Right, yeah.
That's all I can. And now you can tell me there's something else, or I can see a picture that NASA will give me, But that's to me, unless I can see it, I can take a telescope and look right at it. Now, my daughter's going to college out here in California. We're Seventh-day Adventist, and she's going to La Sierra University, then Loma Linda for a nursing program. But La Sierra has astrology program. Yeah. I've been meaning to go out there and get their telescope.
Astronomy.
Astronomy, yeah. Right. And I'm saying, listen, guys, I want you, with your fancy telescope, to show me something that isn't a light in the sky. I mean, show me to where I can see Saturn where NASA shows me Saturn, where it's this ball, it's all pretty, and it's this, or the rings around this planet, or what. Show me something, because all I've ever seen in the sky physically is light. And I'll take your telescope, and since you guys do this,
and to be shining,
this is what you do.
To be shining from that far away, the what we see out there twinkling has to be a sun. You know what I mean?
I don't think so. I think it's an angel.
Really?
I think it's an angel. I don't think it's a sun. No, because
the Bible does refer to the stars of the heaven as angels.
Exactly. When they refer to stars, they're talking, as far as I can tell, about angels. Well, they call Lucifer the morning star. Every time they talk about stars, it's kind of interchangeable. So, as far as I can tell. So, you think about this. How close is the closest star? Well, science will tell you, that's so many light years away, 1,000 light years away. You know what a light year is? It's how long light takes to get in 1 year. Like if you turn on a light.
286,000 miles per second.
Per second in a year.
So think about a year.
And that's 1,000 light years out there. How are you going to see that? Honestly. I mean, they give you, it's like evolution. 60 billion gazillion years, they have to give this ridiculous amount of time because there's no way to prove it. Science, as far as the heavens, is the exact same way. They give you the most ridiculous amount of distance, so there's no way that you can dispute their foolishness, because it's 1,000 light years away, And so, it's a burning sun. Well, there's no telescope in the world.
Gosh, you think about that, 286,000 miles per second. How fast a photon actually travels. That is incredible. I mean, it takes, I think, like 9 minutes for the light from the sun to get to us,
If they say it's 93 million miles away, I don't buy anything they tell me. I don't think that sun's 93 million miles away from what I've seen. Because when I've looked at the sun and the horizon shining through the clouds, I can see rays going left, right. If it's 93 million miles away, literally, all sun rays would be linear. They would be coming into them clouds as a straight line.
Yeah,
there's no way
unless they're reflecting, through the atmosphere. and clouds and stuff. I mean, I don't know. You know, I'm just saying that I think we have a sun, and I think we have Mars, and you know, and stuff like that. A solar system.
Well, I have never seen it. I've seen.
You know, you take an atom, you have a nucleus, and you got electrons rotating around it. Our solar system reminds me of that. You know, and
right.
It's almost like
I've seen sun, I've seen moon. I've never seen anything else in the sky besides light. Personally,
who knows? We might be an electron, or we might be an atom in God's finger. You know,
exactly. Yeah, he could be that large, and we would be. Yeah, exactly. We'll never know till we die.
Right.
But everything that I've learned in science, most of it's pseudoscience. Most of it isn't real science that we can duplicate, that we can see through one of our senses. And, you know, there's certain things we know, you know, for a fact. Law of...
I mean, in school they push evolution as the absolute fact, and it just isn't, you know. There is no... you're not going to dig through and find fossils. And even the fossils they say of Homo habilis and all that, they have like a tooth, you know. How in the hell are you going to build a whole being around that piece of jawbone? You know, how do you know what that thing looked like? Or even a dinosaur.
All the fossils.
I mean, you know, they find a leg bone, and the next thing you know, they got a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And there may be some creatures that look like, you know, the typical dinosaurs, but I think they had feathers.
Well, when I was in Colorado, Fruita and Grand Junction here, they got a dinosaur museum right there. I went in that dinosaur museum, and of course they got these things that look like dinosaurs, their bones, you know, standing up. And I'm looking at this thing. Wow, that's pretty impressive. And I said, is that a bone, or is that like a copy of a bone that you made and constructed? And they said, no, them ain't the actual bones. And I said, well, how would you know that this thing looked the way it did? Where are the actual bones? Well, they get sent to here, and they're protected, and they're in vaults or whatever. But the ones you see right here are is like a replica of the bones, and this is what it looks like. So every museum that you go into, you know, ask them, is them the actual bones? Is that a actual bone of it? No. Every one I'm going to tell you, no, that ain't an actual. So how do you know what actual exists? The only thing the Bible describes in Job is behemoth, which is a Apatosaurus. The way they described it would be what we know of as a Apatosaurus.
And Leviathan.
They don't talk about Leviathan's in the water.
Yeah, and it had scales and stuff.
Exactly, but the land-based animal that they're talking about in Job is perfect description of a Apatosaurus, or a long-necked dinosaur, one of those.
And a tail was like a cedar.
That's the only thing we have in Scripture that they say existed. So, Tyrannosaurus Rex, did it even exist?
Yeah,
I don't know that.
Yeah.
Unless
it's hard to look at science and know what really is true and what isn't, because I know that evolution isn't true. So,
and they are stating that as a fact. You go to school today, they're teaching our kids it's a hypothesis that they call a theory that they teach as a fact. That's what the deal is.
And then they try to tell you also the Bronze Age, they only started making metal and stuff after this certain time. When the Bible says that Tubal-Cain, he was a metal urgist. You know,
exactly.
He was messing with.
They had the mixture of metals from probably Cain and Abel. They learned the mixture of metals, which, like you say, Bronze Age. That's just silly. When we know for a fact that the earliest humans, as far as Scripture goes, mixed metals, and ask yourself this: how would a human on Earth? You're one of the first 100 human beings, and how are you going to figure out? Okay, in that side of that hill, you dig out this type of metal. In that over there, you dig out that type of metal. Over there, you dig out that type of metal. Now you bring these three metals together, 2 parts this, 1 part this, 3 parts this. Then you heat it up at this temperature, and you bring them together and you get this. Could you imagine how hard that would have been to figure that out? First of all, that there's this in the ground over here.
Right.
This was taught, who do you think taught humans metallurgy? It would have to be an angel to have this kind of knowledge.
Yeah, because ore doesn't look like something that I would put in a fire to melt down, you know.
Exactly. And so to learn this from the first people to learn this had to be taught this. And if you read the book of Enoch, that this angel taught metallurgy to, okay, there you go. You know,
and there was some taught makeup, remember?
Exactly, and some taught stars, some taught herbs and roots and stuff like that. So there you go. So the earliest ones dealing with metals knew about metallurgy, and there was no Bronze Age then they did with copper and tin, and then finally iron. No, they had that technology from the beginning. As soon as sin happened, how long it took the angels to start teaching this stuff had to be almost immediately, because they wanted people to build things of war, to kill each other and to manipulate each other, so they can control. That was the whole point of it. Otherwise, there'd be there was no necessity for these things.
Right.
So, anyway, before I forget, I forgot, when I was living in Colorado, this was late 80s, I went from Colorado, I took the 70 across going to home. When I hit St. Louis, I'd take 64 to home, because I live literally quarter mile off the 64 back home. And so one day I was in my vehicle, in my pickup, and I was going from home, or Colorado where I lived, to Indiana, and I was on the 70. So I'm driving along on the 70, and I go to this rest area in Kansas. And the typical Kansas rest area, I've been to rest areas all over this country, but this one had a big, it had a parking lot, and then it had a rest area there where you used the bathroom or whatever. But it also had big grassy area. And I got out of the truck, and I had my pistol in the truck, and I had no reason to carry it up to the rest area, but I always had a pistol with me. And walked up to the rest area, and I noticed something caught my eye. It was in the grassy area. And I'm like, what the hell? So I walked out to where the lights, because in a rest area, they got the lights, and it's pretty bright. I guess they want people not to be scared or something happen. So it's usually a well-lit area. So I had to walk behind the restroom area to get my eyes adjusted. And I noticed something out there in the grass. And I had to get my eyes adjusted. So I walked out there, and I noticed what looked like to me at a distance were people. And they were sitting in the shape of a football, kind of like. Not a circle, but more like a football. There was a bunch of them. And I'm going, what the hell? So I walked a little farther out there. And I got out there, and I'm like, okay, it looks like people sitting down in this shape of a football. And then I got close enough to tell they were all wearing the same thing. It was like they were wearing a bathrobe with a hood, kind of like that. And so I got that close to tell what they were wearing. Now, given they're sitting out there in the damn dark, and obviously their eyes were adjusted for the rest area's light. So, but mine had to go from the light to them. So I've been trying to adjust as best I can. And I have to walk pretty far out there to get relatively close to see what they're wearing, because I'm going from light to dark. And I got close enough to where, okay, I'm seeing how they're sitting. I didn't hear a peep. Nothing was said. They didn't look up. They didn't look at me that I could tell. And they were all wearing these bathrobe-looking things, like a smock or a something like that. I don't know what you call it. And but they had hoods on them, and I couldn't see any of them's face, just a dang hood. Even the ones facing towards me, when I looked at them, I could just see the hood. I couldn't see their facial features. But then I got close enough to where I got, hey, something's like, something ain't right here, and I ain't got my pistol. It's back there. If I had my pistol, I'd have walked right out there to them. I'm a brave individual with a pistol in my hand, right? But I got so close, and I got a feeling that something ain't right. Why would people be out here in the middle of the night? It's maybe 2 a.m. in the middle of the night, sitting out in the grass, and it was summertime. It wasn't wintertime. It was summertime, so it was warm. And I'm like, but that's just odd behavior. People just don't do that. And I went back to my truck and got on the 70 and kept going home. And I don't know what, like I said, I don't know what that means or whatever, but I'm telling you what I seen that night. And that was the weirdest damn thing, going between Colorado and Indiana. This was in Kansas, in the middle of nowhere, dude. This weren't next to Kansas City, This weren't next to a city. This was kind of in the middle of nowhere. So that's another thing. I can see people acting weird next to a city, but out in a farming area where you got cornfield after cornfield after cornfield, why would people act like that or be out there like that? Now, knowing what I know now, hell, I was in my 20s at that time, but knowing what I know now, yeah, there was something, again, it always goes back to witchcraft for me. People, why would they be dressing like that in the middle of the night? They're having some kind of a weird get-together there. But, and I think some of your videos, I've heard of something like this, that people, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, they were having a little witchcraft thing going on there of some type. Could you imagine joining something like that? How do they find each other? And
I don't know.
That's somebody's daughter, somebody's son. I mean, it's horrible.
It really is, and it's everywhere, dude. It's not in cities. It's everywhere. It's in the little towns. It's just everywhere, and I just can't. It's hard for me to fathom that this country has got to that point. We think of this country, me and you, like a Christian nation. Most people are Christian. They went to church when I was little. I went to church. My mom and dad, and we think of the country as that. But you know what? It ain't that. There is a dark side, and it goes all the way back to, I think, the Mayflower. It goes all the way back. And even with the Indians here, they had shamans. They didn't understand the meaning of Jesus Christ, but they understood the Creator. So they had an idea of God. This came from somewhere. And that they also had shamans, which were their version of witchcraft. So they had both sides too. Just people are people. I don't care what culture they are. It seems like every culture has their witchcraft in it. They might call it something different, voodoo or this or that, but it's witchcraft, period. Yeah. So, I thought I've heard some stories before of the same thing I've seen. People were dressed in these robe-looking things, and people walked up to them. I didn't know if it was any of your video or audio.
Probably. I've had a few, I think, like that. And even I think I talked about a story one time where a dog man had one of those on. And it jumped on the back.
Had a robe on?
Yeah, and it jumped on the back of a car and broke the glass, and then they took off and they got back to their house, and that robe thing was, or at least part of it was stuck in the glass.
Huh. Well, if I heard that, like somebody told me that, I'm thinking this was a person that turned into a dog man while wearing the robe. I can't imagine why a dog man would want a robe. Yeah.
And I think there was a story about two little kids on bicycles, and they ran across a seance thing like that going on. They were sacrificing something, and there was
one got killed?
two huge dog men. Yeah, yeah. And
the one boy got killed, and the bicycle got twisted up and thrown in a tree or something like that.
That was a different one.
Okay.
Party. But yeah, the dog men chased after the kids, and one of them, the kids got taken. But the twisted bicycle was these people was at a party, and there was something that came, and the owners were like, "Oh no, not this again!" And they all went in the house, and they put them in the basement, and they could hear stuff being tore up, and they went outside, and the privacy fence was tore all up, and a bicycle twisted and thrown in a tree. I think that's the one you're thinking of, with the twisted bicycle. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I've had so many stories, man. It's hard for me to remember.
Into each other. Right, they blend into each other. I'm thinking, okay, which one was that one? Yeah, and like you say, you got a lot of videos, and then Wes has a lot, and then there's a couple other guys I listen to. I can't remember what the name of them are. Oklahoma one. What's the one that looks like State of Oklahoma?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. They do mostly just like the Bigfoot, where I do all of the different stuff. It opens the door for a lot of different topics to be covered when you cover mysteries, instead of just...
Well, when you're dealing with angelic or witchcraft, which I think a lot of this is, it would go to God knows what.